242 students total, and within those 242 students, we have 40 of them on IEPs. And our district as a whole is less than 50% free and reduced, which worked out pretty well this year because we were able to do the whole summer school lunch programs and breakfast programs for them, so that was nice. And then at the high school, we are 912. We have 241 students through that. And within those 241 students, there are 44 students on IEPs. Just kind of a heads up on our demographics. So we started this because we were a METS pilot school. The first year we did it without funding, and this is our first year without funding, I apologize. And a lot of the same things that we did with our funding, we still were able to continue to do this year. We have meetings, and we can put our students as the focus and make sure that our flow of services and other discussions are all collaborated. We discuss with our students, staff, and other community members, helping them to work towards paid work experience. Our goal is, helping them to work towards paid work experience, career development, making sure our resources are aligned to have quality VR referrals, and to continue relationships with our businesses and agencies within the community. You can go to the next slide. Perfect. So throughout this presentation, we're going to kind of give you the goods and the bads, the successes and the failures as we go through it. So this is kind of like a title slide introducing you to the rest of the different slides as we'll go. These are some of the successes. If you've been to one of our webinars before, they are some of the ones, if you could go back actually, they are some of the ones that we have looked at as successes in the past and also successes now. So we wanted to re-highlight some and also add some new ones in there. So we have family engagement night, job coaching and job skills classes. We have job tours and job shadows, middle school career day and high school career panel. We have the NCRTC testing and as well as career boot camp, which we'll talk about. Communication, and we'll talk about that in both successes and in setbacks. Because there's positives and negatives within the communication area. And then we'll talk about our summer, what we've been able to do with the Amazing Race, and in general education infusions that we've been able to make happen.
So with our family engagement night, this is actually the 5th year that we've done it. We do it during parent-teacher conferences in the fall, and what takes place is we send out, as special education teachers, we create schedules and we work with our community partners, and all of our parents have a slot with their child to come and talk to these different agencies about their services. So because we had such a larger number this year, we decided to divide it up and have freshmen and sophomore one night and juniors and seniors one night. And so with that, we were able to bring in some different people and kind of make it more focused on where they're at with their education system. We've had a lot of really good feedback from parents and our community members. So when it comes to their IEP meetings, they don't look at us like, what is this person doing here? They've already established a relationship with these community agencies. And this has also helped with our improved VR referrals, or like with Valbani and our Iowa workforce, even with our 4+ program, and we're able to make those connections early and have those conversations, which I think before we started this night were really hard to have. This year we added, we have a trio program, and so we added her, the coordinator for that, as well as we also had reached out to the person in charge of disability services at Iowa Lakes in Emmitsburg. So it was really great for the students to hear what services that if they were going to go to Iowa Lakes as a 2-year or even just to a 4-year school, what kinds of things disability services can offer them. So I think it's great to hear as far as accommodations, what supports they can have or they're entitled to. So moving on to the next slide, we started this year a job skills class, and we had one of our paras go through the job coaching to be a job coach. We looked at how we can better help our students, especially level 2s within our school system, and we thought that this job skills class was a good fit. We just did it we piloted it last spring, and so they worked through some different books, they did different activities, they looked at different career values. We have these career value cards that we got through our intermediary that is through Iowa Lakes, just to identify what things they like to do, what their talents are, and that kind of correlates to what kinds of jobs they might have. They all did job shadows, they all did job tours, and then some even got some internship or work type placements. We had 2 individuals that actually went over to our elementary school, and one worked with the janitorial staff, and then another worked with a preschool classroom over there. Both were not paid, but it was really good experience for them, and we're hoping to help them get paid employment this year doing those kinds of things. We also had Job Corps come in and talk to our students. We actually opened it up to all special ed and at-risk students, and had Job Corps, some representatives come and talk to our students about that possibility too. We just thought this was a really needed and beneficial class, just to kind of get them to have some more time to focus on some of those soft skills that they maybe don't have. Our VR representative was super instrumental in all of this, and from that they just got done doing their summer program where we had 5 students from Emmitsburg take place with that, and we actually now have another person who is able to just focus on our special education students for job shadows. They're a work-based coordinator out of Iowa Lakes, so we're really excited to add her into our mix this next year to kind of help us with this whole process of helping our students find some different experiences outside of the community.
So this is our second year doing job tours, job shadows, and career panels for all grades. And it's our first year of the independent living class. All of our students went on a job tour based off their career interests. Some of those locations on there are given. It was really interesting hearing back from some of the different students, their feedback on whether or not they enjoyed it, and different things that they learned throughout the experience. It sounded like a lot of them, if anything else, if it was a negative for them, they at least had a day off of school, so they enjoyed that aspect. There was also a career panel for 9-12, where over 20 members from the area came and talked to our students about their jobs. We divided them up into specific areas that they emphasized in, so like HVAC professionals or banking professionals, those types of things. And they would come in and talk to our students and kind of do like a Q&A forum where they talked about some things within their area, but also were open to the students for them to ask questions about it. As part of Emmitsburg's graduation requirements, we added in the independent living, like we talked about earlier, they complete a resume, cover letter, mock interview, and a job shadow, and a little bit more. So when they were going through it, a lot of this, Molly Hamilton, our intermediary, helped arrange all of this. So it's nice to be able to have that to depend on to help us help the students. And this is an all students area, not just special education. So it's nice to be able to incorporate this with both our gen ed and our sped students, so we're not separated, and it's something that everybody benefits from. In the middle school, we started doing a career day every year. In the past, our goal was to do a job tour with the TAG students and the SPED students specifically every other year. We've gone away from that because we decided that the career day was so beneficial that we're doing it every year. We're changing up the different types of people that come in, and it's all based on student-driven surveys and student choice. So we take the P3, which is the Positive Personal Profile Assessment, and that guides where we go and who we select and how many different areas we have. We have them take within the P3 an online career inventory, and the 7th and 8th graders specifically use that information to help them select their job or their choice of career that they would want to pursue or invest more into. And so this year we ended up having 4 different rotations, so 4 different people that they could visit. But the side are some pictures of some of the different ones that you can see. The bottom one is an OT that came in, and she's actually teaching the students that what OT can do to help you and how it's more difficult when you do have fine motor skills issues. There's a sock over their hands and everything, so they're trying to write. It was a fun strategy for the kids to see, but also to see all the different things that some students have to overcome. It was very interactive. The students were able to participate, as you can see. The students were able to ask questions throughout it, and the presenters were given very minimal direction. They were able to improv and give the presentation however they felt comfortable, because we didn't want to put parameters around them. The only things we wanted them to specifically talk about is the level of education they needed in order to achieve their position, and a range, if they were comfortable, of their salary. There were around 40, I think, community members there, just because we had rotations of people that could only be there in the morning and people that could be there in the afternoon. And most of, I would say about 80% of our people were all local community people. And the nice part about that is that the students can then see people they know, adults they know, in a business sense as well, to develop that respect in all forms instead of just as a parent or as an adult friend. So going through this, we decided, we wanted to make sure that we weren't going to just, we're still on that slide, or we wanted to make sure that we wanted to get all the feedback from the teachers. And one of the things that they said is that they thought it'd be better to get the P3 in the fall so the students can present it at student-led conferences. And instead of focusing on only local, which is what our kids know, to try and pull in more outside resources for the unknown jobs. Try and get some more Skyping opportunities in there for them, and other ways for them to be able to experience things that maybe they don't know enough about.
Our P3 looks at their dreams, their goals, their values, preferences, and it's really awesome because we do this 5/12. So even in the high school, we do this in the fall, and then we share them out 5/12 at conferences. So it's really cool to see, based on what the students, what they feel like they need as far as their strengths and their preferences and their interests, and then looking at what they want to be when they grow up and things they're interested in, and just how that transforms year after year. So that's the P3.
And in this one, it's again a whole school initiative, of not just special education. So it's nice to see again the infusion between the special education and general education environments.
In the high school, this is our 4th year, will be our 5th year doing the NCRC tests. This is an ACT work keys test. It's free, and we just have different people within our faculty get trained. First, it started with special ed teachers, and then we branched out to have some more get trained to proctor this test. We only have sophomores and juniors take it, and then our freshmen do what we have called a career boot camp. So they go through the cover letter and resume writing process, and then they actually have a mock interview where we have lined up people to come in and in an area that they're interested in, and again, looking at their P3s as well. They go on an interview, and then what's really awesome is the people who are doing the interviews, they have rubrics that they fill out, and the students actually get to see, based on these rubrics, what they did well, what they need to work on, looking at their resume and cover letter, you know, what different things could they improve on. We just thought that this paired really well, since we had sophomores and juniors taking the test, that freshmen can be doing this, and then our seniors get the afternoon off, unless they want to retest for their NCRC. More and more businesses are starting to ask and look for these. There's actually 4 different rankings. There's bronze, silver, gold, and then platinum. And it just kind of looks at different skills you could have to be successful in a job. It has 3 tests. It's math, reading, and then locating information. And what's been really great is our special ed students, even though they don't have any accommodations for it, We have consistently been over 60% of our special ed students have obtained a certificate in either bronze, silver, or gold, which is awesome. Because some students that we wouldn't necessarily think had some of those skills, they were able to prove that through this exam. And then we put this on our transition services page in our IEPs as well. Communication has been really something that has been driving our middle school and high school department, especially this last year. We started quarterly special ed department meetings. So we met 4 times last year as a K-12, including all special ed teachers, as well as our special ed director and administration when they could come. And we talked about various things, talking about rosters, talking about interventions and services, assistive tech, and sharing out some new and different things that we're doing in our classrooms. We did different fidelity checks, and as well as just having some conversations about problem solving. Really struggling with this student. Do you guys have any ideas how to help with this? And it's been really good just to meet and talk about different things we're seeing and how to be more consistent throughout our district.
And seeing how those same issues were at all levels and not necessarily just in one building, and getting different people's ideas to help through it as to what worked in one area and maybe what can work in another.
We also started in the high school. We had meetings twice a month before school with our special ed teachers, and then we had our counselor, our principal, and then any of our AEA interventionists that could come to really talk about problem solving. We talked about concerns. We talked about just different things, because we rarely have a chance to meet to talk about our kids and how we can better help them. We had an influx of, when we started the school year, we had 10 new special ed students, most of which we got not even the week before school started. So as we're learning about all of them and trying to best help them and their needs, this has been really valuable, I would say, to be able to meet and have good dialogue just about what's going on, how we can help, things we're seeing, and it's just been great to bounce some ideas off of each other. We also, our AEA personnel has also started with our in-services. They do para meetings with all of our paras, K-12. At the first Wednesday of the month, we have in-service Wednesday, first and third Wednesdays. So they take all the paras and they do trainings with them, which has been really great to see. And our paras really enjoy that as well.
We decided to add on to that at the middle school level and have a para meeting too. We were finding that a lot of teachers were complaining about certain things that paraprofessionals were doing, but it wasn't just one that was doing it. There may have been multiple. And instead of singling a specific para out, we would have meetings over some of the things that maybe needed to be improved on, or if students' plans were changing, it was just easier to meet as a whole and have that communication within our area, within the special education teachers, with the paraeducators, and then also with our administration. So our principal and sometimes our superintendent would come in, depending on the issue, to have conversations about things that needed to change or things that people were doing really well. We made sure to not just make it a negative conversation, but also do MVPs throughout the month of who maybe was really on the ball throughout the month and did a great job with student X, or things that we were seeing throughout lunch, or things that they were doing duty-wise that they were doing a great job of. We wanted to showcase their development through the year.
And as you can see, as a general theme, we've really tried to focus on this general education infusion within our students, being able to not be a separate entity, but want them to get the same experiences as everybody else. So this year, we, 2 years ago, Shalene Nag,
You can go to the next slide.
She started the Morning Buzz, this little coffee shop where she'd have some students in her first period class make coffee, take orders through Google Forms, and then deliver it out. Well, it got to be too much with just her 3 students. So she co-taught with our food fundamentals class that's offered for juniors and seniors. And so they infused that into that classroom. So as you can see from some of our pictures, throughout the semester, different groups made the coffees or hot chocolate, and then different groups delivered them. And so Shalene ended up co-teaching with her, so that she still could be a part of it and her students could still be a part of it, which was really awesome. And then we also started second semester last year, our FCS teacher started a restaurant class. And so they did it every other week, and they did everything from picking a theme, they planned, they prepped, they cooked everything, they took orders, and then they waited on the staff and community members. And it was a 3-course meal. And it was really great to see our special education students as a part of both of these classes and learn these valuable skills, and see how excited they got being a part of that too, because both of these classes was based on teacher selection, not just anybody could be in it. So this was definitely some awesome things that happened within our CTE department last year. Some additional successes just to kind of point out in the high school. We had 61% of our students had paid work experience last year. 75% of our students completed a job shadow, a job tour, or both. We had, unfortunately, we had 12 students either drop out or get removed from placement to a different placement. And so that's why that number looks a little less, but we had 100% do a job tour. But with some job shadow restrictions, you had to be 16. So that's where that 75% is a little bit lower, because not everybody could do that. And then 90% of our special education students and parents attended our family engagement night. So I think that just speaks volumes to how much we've progressed as a special education department in this district and some of the awesome things that we're doing here in Emmitsburg. So now to the not so awesome, or kind of some obstacles that we have kind of seen. By no means, I would say that they are definitely challenges, but we are confident that we'll be able to continue improving and tweaking and changing as the year progresses. So we're going to kind of talk about some mental health influx, scheduling, and then that staff turnover and communication.
So mental health has become an issue, not just in our area, but across other communities. And it's one of those things where a lot of us feel ignorant to what we can do and what we can't do. So we tend to do what we're calling like Band-Aids and try and fix it the best we can, but we're not sure if we're doing it the best way. So mental health right now is an emphasis that we want in some of our professional development within our school system. And it's been something we've been pushing from the community to us, but also within our own teaching staff. We need more training, and we want to make sure that we receive, we did end up receiving a grant from one of our counselors who comes in each week. She's one of our service providers, and she came in with a grant that said that she could help in the education of our staff for some of the mental health needs that we have. And so we're trying to schedule right now some professional development with her and our staff to learn more about some of the mental health that we have and how to better equip ourselves with tools to help these students. And that grant allowed us for 8 hours of training for the staff, and that'll hopefully happen throughout this year. We're still waiting on scheduling issues with that. Sometimes the additional services and agencies that we get within our school system don't always go together. If you want to go to the next slide. What ends up happening is we will think one thing and the counselors or other people might be doing a whole nother, and instead of us always being on the same page, sometimes that communication and actual ideas as a whole don't necessarily mesh. What one person's seeing versus what the other group is seeing doesn't always come together. So what we would like to see is more of a whole group, like it takes a village concept, mindset change, where we can all be on the same page working for the positive success of that student. We are also seeing that students are helping us change our mindsets on what their objectives and their goals need to be in our environments as well. And that's not just as a special education teacher, but as a staff, trying to help our general education teachers better equip themselves, as well as our counselors and our administration. What works best for these students, and how do we better meet their needs within our environment and within their academic scheduling and within their academic goals in general. But some of the issues we're running into is in dealing with communication and HIPAA, because there are some things that are hard for us to get to know due to HIPAA. Other people think that we don't need to know and we would like to know, and it's hard to do the overlap with the It Takes a Village concept when some of the barriers are up there.
Another big barrier in the high school is scheduling. As you know, if you're familiar with high school, we have graduation requirements. And sometimes that's really difficult for the student who is not good at your reading or writing or your math, because of their reading levels, and their abilities. So we've really, it's really difficult to tell the students that they can't take the elective class that they're really good at because they have to repeat or double up on an English or a math class because they have yet to pass it. Which is why it's a setback, because we are definitely still trying to find ways to get both things in there. As I kind of mentioned earlier, we had quite a new student influx, and we get quite a few throughout the school year. And so when they come, you're trying to do the best, reading an IEP that maybe it's from another state, reading transcripts, trying to figure out what their actual level of understanding is, and their transcripts credits may not always be the same. So we have had to be very flexible and creative with some different classes, some different accommodations for some of those students to get their needs met. We use Apex Learning, part of our at-risk program, and our alternative school also uses Apex, and so we as a special ed department has used it just for some individualized curriculum. Some of our students we find are much more successful doing some core classes, those English, math, science, social studies, in that type of format instead of sitting in the general education classroom. Maybe it's due to the curriculum and the reading levels, or it's just due to their own personal preference. But we've used Apex and have had some success with that in kind of creating some curriculum for them and to help them be successful. We also struggle too with Emmitsburg. It will be in year 3 of the TLC grant, which is awesome, and there's so many benefits, but we have some half-time teachers because of these positions. And so we struggle as a special ed department because when we create our student schedules, we are at the mercy of the master schedule. So if you only can have 3 sections of U.S. history and they're all in the morning, and we have, like this year, we had 5 students who wanted to do Career Academy out at the college to get a jump start to see if they really liked diesel tech or their welding program or the auto mechanic program. They couldn't take that class because they, as a junior, have to take U.S. history, and it's the first 3 classes of the day, and that's when their Career Academy class is offered. So we are really struggling with that, I would say, right now, trying to figure out this is what the student really wants and they're interested in, but how do we make it so they can still be a part of both and they're not feeling penalized because it's a scheduling issue. It's not something that they did, why they can't be in the class.
And that's a small town community issue because we have so many shared staff within our district. It's minimizing the time that we have for those teachers to be available to teach those classes. So that's where some of the hindrances are coming from.
Communication, like Erica mentioned earlier, it has definitely been a success for us in some aspects, but it's also continuing to be a barrier. With the new changes and challenges that mental health bring, different AEA representation, services that we maybe didn't know about or didn't know that our students could receive, or our parents were getting additional services and they didn't tell us. We've had quite a bit of staff turnover. Will be for this next school year, so that's going to be another setback just to some of the processes and procedures that we have been doing may be done differently.
Within those areas also, when we don't know what's going on with the students, we solely are at the mercy of what the parent wants to tell us, which is perfectly fine. But a lot of times parents don't know that they could or should tell us, so it's a catch-22. We want to know, but we don't know what to tell them to tell us. So we're in this loop of not knowing. And we want to be able to invite those people to our IEP meetings so we can all be on the same page again in some of our planning. So we have aligned VR and special education goals for their successful future post-secondary. And without knowing what we don't know, we're not able to invite those people, and they aren't able to know what we know as well.
And just with that too, some of, a lack of information. We have had just some mental health issues or behavior issues with some of our students this last year, and it's not connecting the dots of, as case managers, we need to know what's going on. Not hear about it third or fourth hand information, because then we can't offer up what we know about the child and and the relationships that we've built with these people in our child's lives, because we were not privy to that information. And I think that's just something that needs to continue, be very transparent with the information that's provided with our students, so we can offer the best environment for our students. I think, overall, Emmitsburg is doing some amazing things. We work really hard to be in sync and do what's best for our students, and we've come a long way in the last 5 or 6 years. So we're excited to see where this is going to continue to go. But we do, like every school, has some setbacks and challenges that we still need to flush out for this upcoming school year. But on this side, you can see our contact information. I'm Becky. I actually moved to a different school district, so that's why I have a different email up there. And then Shalene is our level 2-3 high school special ed teacher. So if you have questions, you can definitely reach out to us. Let us know. We'd be happy to answer if you have questions too.
Thank you so much, Becky and Erica. I appreciate it. I actually do have a question for you, but I'm going to save it to the end because I want to make sure I give Julie enough time. So I want to welcome everybody, Julie Christensen, our new, well, maybe not so new, Julie, right? It's been about a year now. Director for Iowa's University Center for Excellence on Disabilities, Center for Disabilities and Development. Julie's here today to talk to us about some successful strategies and models happening across the country, including in New York and Texas. Julie came to us from New York, and she was the head of the PI project there, which is the same project that the coalition headed here in Iowa. So we're super excited to have her. Thank you, Julie. I'll just hand it right over to you. You take it away.
All right. So what I'm going to attempt to accomplish in very little time is just to give very high-level overview of two models that are promising practices in transition. And I know there's not a lot of time to really get into the details, but what I thought might be helpful is just to give a little bit of a sense of what these are, maybe to spur some ideas, not necessarily promoting that these particular models are things that folks would want to do or that we, want to bring to Iowa, but thinking about the lessons learned about what's happening in other places across the country to improve outcomes for transitioning students who are interested in career pathways. So the first one is Project Search, and that's actually not new to Iowa, but this is a national model, about 500 programs internationally now, and actually on the next slide is a little bit of a map that just shows the 13 programs that are in Iowa, and they're no surprise located in high population areas of the state, and that is one of the downsides to Project Search, is that as a model it does require some certain things in terms of having a large enough single host business to be able to absorb having a full classroom of 8 to 12 students or young adults. So Project Search typically is a high school transition program, but in Iowa, actually most Project Search programs are adult programs, which is interesting with high school transition versions of the model just sort of coming on board in the last couple of years. But we can keep moving forward here. So just some key components. Project Search, what does make it unique is that it's intended to be business-led. And so there are some standard model fidelity requirements to be a Project Search program, but each program does look slightly different because it really takes on the culture of the host business. It also is meant to be a self-sustaining model, and it's one of the reasons it's a particularly popular one is that, once you sort of get past the initial investment of time and startup costs, the dollars that fund Project Search are braided through, for lack of a better term, kind of follow the student, follow the adult kind of model. So dollars that are already existing through education, vocational rehabilitation, or Medicaid. The whole goal of Project Search is to have a fully immersive experience. So all of the training happens directly in the business. There's no, coming to and from a school or coming to and from a provider agency. It all happens right on site, and with the goal of being able to provide sort of a low cost, low risk opportunity for businesses to start to engage in training and hiring people with disabilities and changing the corporate culture of seeing people with disabilities as a talent pool to meet business need. You can go to the next slide. So the way that the collaboration works, to be a Project Search program, you have to have these sort of 5 entities. At the top of it is a host business, and then supporting the host business is an education partner. If it's a high school transition program, you're talking about a school district. If it's an adult program, it could be some sort of adult continuing ed partner, and then the supported employment agency, so a community rehabilitation provider that offers supported employment. And then sort of at the base of this is both vocational rehabilitation and developmental disabilities and Medicaid agency. They're called different things in different states that are not just what I would call sort of the funding piece, but also really the foundation of helping to bridge that connection from training into being a supported employee in the community. Keep going. So Project Search actually only has one goal. It's to provide employability skills training to students and young adults with significant disabilities, but over time a secondary goal has come out, which is also to provide supports to businesses that are engaged in Project Search to encourage them to hire people with disabilities. And then on the next slide should be the corresponding outcomes, which is that our participants obtain and maintain competitive employment, not necessarily in the business where they are trained, but potentially in a like business or elsewhere in the community. And then with the secondary outcome that we want our Project Search host businesses and partner businesses to really give significant consideration to hiring people with disabilities where there are appropriate job matches. Project Search does focus on complex and systematic work, so we see our graduates going into anything from working in, for example, if in a hospital setting, surgical sterilization, in a retail setting, being, front-end cashiers, sort of the sky's the limit. The program offers the opportunity to train for real-world jobs. So what Project Search does not do is get into job carving or customized employment, although that plays a little bit into it, but really it's about providing a systematic process for teaching someone how to do a job that is of interest to them. You can keep going. So it follows a typical 1 year, and I apologize that this can be an adult model, and I'm sort of talking about transition, so you'll see that language here. Typically, it's 12 students. So it kind of follows a 12-1-1 model from a school district perspective. The school is providing the instructor and instructional support, and the community rehabilitation provider is providing a job coach. Project Search does intend participants to agree to be in their last year of high school. So typically, here in Iowa, we talk about sort of that 5th year, but not always. Sometimes, it's a senior in high school that just agrees to give up that 5th year, even if they're eligible, because the goal is to provide a full year of intensive supports leading towards a job. So what we don't want is someone doing that intensive training and then going right back into the school where they could lose those skills. And then the next slide just is a visual of kind of what the program looks like. So from a school transition perspective, it does mirror the school schedule, although there is no going to the physical school as part of the program. They start and end their day at the host business. So there's typically an orientation and onboarding and all that kind of thing in the beginning of the year. And then as the year progresses, participants complete up to 3 internships in length of 8 to 12 weeks per internship. They're customized to build and provide sort of a scaling up scaffolding of skills leading to a job. But we do start to look at job searching during that 3rd internship. So some of our participants will leave early if they find a job, and others will stay till June and start job development over the summer. So everything's very much individualized. And then on the next slide, it just gives sort of a sense of what a typical school day would look like, or project search day, I should say. And again, this follows the business, so whatever makes sense to the business. But I think, you know, the takeaway from this slide is that the bulk of the students' time is actually spent on their internships. They spend about 20 hours, 20 to 22 hours a week on site in their internships, but their time is bookended in an employability skills or classroom setting, where they are also following employability skills curriculum and also having an opportunity to learn leadership skills and self-advocacy skills and all those other important pieces to the job. And then the internships themselves are really, as I mentioned, really the bulk of the program. That is where the majority of the time is spent. The reason for needing a large host business is that every internship is completely individualized. Project Search works really hard to not in any way, shape, or form look like an enclave. So internships have to be in completely different parts of the hospital where the student is working alongside employees of the host business and working towards that independence and use of natural supports. But with the Project Search team, the special education team, and the job coach there to provide supports both to the student intern and also to the departments and the employees where the students are placed for their internship. And I think the next slide is just a little bit on outcomes. So I actually did a longitudinal study of Project Search a couple of years ago, and we saw great results. But I think generally speaking, what Project Search is known for is their initial outcomes, which for many years have been 60% or over. I just got the 2016 data actually just this morning, and the outcomes across the Project Search 400 programs that reported last year was right around 76%. So that means 76% of all students that completed the Project Search year were able to be competentively employed, which in the Project Search world is defined as working 20 hours a week at minimum wage or better in fully integrated, individualized, community-based employment settings. And there's also a breakout just in terms of the types of students that we're talking about. So Project Search really does see itself as a model that lends itself to the supports of students with the most significant disabilities. So the primary target is intellectual and developmental disabilities, but increasingly Project Search has been a model that has been utilized by dual diagnosis students. So really thinking about the earlier conversation we were just having, you know, what about students that have high behavioral needs and mental health challenges? And not to say that Project Search has figured it out, and when you get into the data, their outcomes for that population are not as strong for just the intellectual developmental disability cohort, but still really promising results in general for moving students from school to work. So that's sort of a fly-by night kind of overview. And now I'm going to kind of switch gears and talk about a completely different type of a program. And I'm not going to take any ownership of this one at all. We're a University Center for Excellence in Disabilities, and so we're part of a national network. And my colleagues at Texas A&M University have developed the PATHS program. It was a program we were looking to replicate in New York before I left, and we've also had some preliminary conversations about whether or not this is something we might be able to replicate here at the University of Iowa. But I put it out there as another great promising practice that is showing some great results, but with some interesting twists. So what the Texas A&M team did was really looked at this combination of, what is post-secondary education for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and there are a lot of campus-based programs around the country, but they combined that approach along with looking at, in partnership with vocational rehabilitation and the workforce development folks in Texas, where there were specific needs, and where they came back in their research was to say that there really was a lack of qualified direct support professionals to help support individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities in the community, and under the auspices of really wanting to promote full inclusion when we talk about employment, could we look at an integrated curriculum on a college campus that would allow students with intellectual and developmental disabilities transition into a credit-bearing transition program on a college campus where they ultimately are certified by the state of Texas to be a direct support professional. So people with intellectual and developmental disabilities actually being able to support other people with intellectual and developmental disabilities in their community. So you can go to the next slide. Which gives a little bit more background in terms of their guiding principles. So this is a fully inclusive model. It's students with disabilities and without disabilities. They attend the same courses and the same curriculum. Students are coming from all over the university to participate in this program. They do follow the national accreditation for direct support professionals, and that is the goal, is for the students to be exiting with that same accreditation that any other student could get. It is offered through sort of their adult continuing ed part of the Texas A&M campus. So it's not typically matriculated undergraduate students, but other individuals from the community who are interested in being direct support professionals, and so people with and without disabilities have access to this. You can go on to the next slide. So there is a summer boot camp, 4 weeks for students between their last year of traditional high school and their time in the PATHS program, and really that's focused on just helping these expose these young folks to some of the basic independent living skills that are needed to be on a college campus. So students are living in dorms, they are learning how to do their laundry, they're learning how to navigate public transportation, they're doing everything else that an incoming, freshman on a college campus is typically expected to be able to figure out, but we're just providing a little bit of supports to help bridge that gap and make sure that they are set up for success when they arrive on campus. And then in the fall and spring, they follow the same semester schedule as everyone else. So they're doing their coursework, they're doing their internships, their practicums, their observations, their volunteer, everything that all the not the students without disabilities are doing. They're following the same curriculum along the 2-semester schedule on the campus. You can continue to the next slide. Lots of partners make this happen, including student mentors, which I think is also a really cool component of this. So they reach out broadly, and every student in the PATHS program is connected with a student mentor on the Texas A&M campus, which is really more about helping the students build a network of social supports and friends, and just being part of the Texas A&M community, going to football games, figuring out where's the cheapest place to go get dinner on a Friday night, all those normal things that college freshmen do. You can continue. And so I'm not going to go over these next 2 slides. They just get a little bit into, what are we talking about in terms of careers. I will say that they have added on for childcare, because that came up as sort of a secondary career pathway where there was great need that they were able to build a curriculum in as well. But you can continue on. And so the presentation, which I know you have copies of and are able to download, gives a sense of what the summer schedule looks like. And then I think the next slide gives a sense of what the school year looks like in terms of a typical weekly schedule, when they're in class, when they have internships, when they have volunteer time. And again, this is for every student that enrolls in these 2 certificate programs, whether it's the DSP certificate or the Childcare certificate. And you can go on to the next slide. And this just gives a sense of the outcomes that they've had. So they have started this program a couple of years ago. They've had 75 students go through, and they do have a graduation rate of 80% with a job success rate of 88%, which is, I think, fantastic, given the complexities of what they're trying to accomplish. The next 2 slides are just some testimonials that are there for you to peruse, both from the standpoint of a mentor. That first slide was a young man actually from the College of Engineering, so had nothing to do with disabilities, but he wanted to volunteer and got involved in this program, and so he speaks about what he learned as a result of this and what that will mean to him as a career as an engineer and thinking about the world from sort of a fully inclusive accessibility standpoint. And then there's a testimonial from the next slide, from a participant who completed his CNA. And so, really great results from this. I think the last slide and where I'll end up is just the direct contact information for the Texas A&M team. They're wonderful. And again, and the next slide after this is my contact information. So, my purpose today was just to give sort of a quick overview of just some different models and different ways of looking at trying to increase outcomes for students and young adults as they're making that transition from school to the adult world of, we hope, employment, and different ways of doing that. And hoping that this can maybe spark some conversation and some ideas in communities around Iowa about things that we might be able to learn from these types of initiatives. And happy to answer any questions that folks have. My contact information is here, and certainly happy to initiate conversations with the Texas team if you'd like more specific information about what they're doing there. And I think I stayed within time.
Fantastic. Yes, you did. Thank you, Julie. Let's see if there's any questions here for you, Julie and or Becky and Erica. Becky and Erica, I had a question for you while I look here on the dashboard. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how you were able to develop. You talked a lot about all the different job tours and shadows, the career panel, getting that diverse group of community members in for the rotations for Career Day. How were you guys able to develop those or get that going? And then what role did your partnerships play? I know you mentioned like VR, the intermediary network, and partnering with providers. Kind of what does that look like, and what role do those partnerships play in that?
So for the general education, job tours, job shadows, career panel, for the most part, the intermediary through Iowa Lakes, so it's Connected Iowa Lakes, Molly Hamilton, she did most of the legwork. She met with our counselor, I met with her, as well as administration, and then we set up the dates early on, and then we started brainstorming based on some of our students' needs and interests, what types of jobs would be a good fit for those career panels, the worksite tours, and then even some job shadows. And then from the special ed standpoint, with our job shadow class, or the job skills class, honestly, Molly Giddings was our VR person, and she did a lot of it between her and then our job coach. They made phone calls and they connected with people. So it's been really awesome too in the past, and we haven't done it as much, but we would do monthly meetings with all of our services. And so it was really great to have our intermediary, VR, Iowa Workforce, Horizons, SAVE, we'd have our AEA, we'd have everybody around the table, and we'd all be talking about different students that are 16 to 18 years old and talk about what we can do to get them more information and their feet, start getting their feet wet to see what they want to do as a potential career outside of high school. And so some of those connections initially were made, and then bouncing off each other to find resources and people to help us with the diverse group for those experiences.
At the middle school level, before METS, we had just one counselor calling multiple random people that she knew personally or businesses that she hoped would come, and she developed like her own list to go off of. After she created the list is kind of a baseline for us to go off of. However, we wanted to continue bringing in other new requests from the students. So this year it was a lot of guesswork. As middle school, because the students are younger, we can't access the intermediary network. So it's a combination of asking for resource ideas that she does have to see if she can provide us with a list, but then also being able on our own to see our gaps and see if we can reach out and find somebody that we maybe missed beforehand.
Great, thank you. And Julie, I do have a question for you. Do you know of any place, and I believe state possibly, that is trying to replicate the PATHS program? It sounds like a great model.
Not currently. We've had some preliminary conversations here at the University of Iowa, but they've been very preliminary at this point. So, you know, as with, you know, any full model fidelity type of program, there are things that PATHS requires to be a full PATHS program, and the two specific things that are a factor in replicating that model are having access to appropriate housing and transportation for students to be able to live on and near campus and navigate around just like any other student. That was the barrier to why we were not successful in replicating in New York when I was there before I left. We actually think Iowa City has a really good infrastructure to be able to support that, and I'm sure there are other college communities around the state that you could say the same for. So definitely something we're really interested in bringing to Iowa, or what lessons can we learn from this type of a program that you know, we may adapt to better fit the needs of students here in Iowa.
Great. Thank you, Julie. And thank you again, Becky and Erica. And thanks again.